You want a podcast? Welcome to Flute 360, the podcast that reminds you everything is connected. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, flutist, educator, creative entrepreneur, and follower of Christ. Here, we explore the full circle, the 360, of your life as a musician, because who you are as a person shapes who you are as an artist, and the lessons you learn outside the practice room are just as vital as the hours with your flute in hand. From health and spiritual growth to artistry and career fulfillment, this space is where it all intersects. Come as you are. There's a seat for you at the Flute 360 table. Today's episode is episode 351, and it's titled Vision Beyond Sight with Liz Hargest. Hey 360er, before we jump in, I want to tell you something that might surprise you. For years, many flutists told me they avoided master classes because of perfectionism. They were afraid to be seen in process, afraid to be messy. But what if the messy middle is exactly where the magic happens? Inside the Flute 360 Accelerator, we're creating a brave, supportive space where you can grow as a flutist and as a person. You'll get live coaching, replay access, and a community that celebrates your progress, not your perfection. Come join us inside. You don't have to do this journey alone. Learn more at heidikbegay.com/shop or click the link in today's show notes. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for returning back to the Flute 360 podcast episode and clicking play. Today's guest is not just a guest of mine, but she is a dear, dear friend, a fellow believer, and a dear colleague and student of mine. Liz and I actually met through the Flute 360 podcast about 3 years ago. She wrote me this fantastic, sweet email, and since then, the rest is history. We've been able to collaborate together in the Accelerator program, and I have learned a lot from her. So it would be so silly of me not to have the fantastic Liz on the podcast to share her expertise, her knowledge, and her love. She is such a pillar in our community. I have learned tremendous amounts of faith from her, information from her, and the flute community and the music world is better off because she's in it. So thank you so much, Liz, for being here, and I can't wait to pick your brain.
That's an amazing introduction, and I'm happy to share whatever you think will benefit listeners.
Yes, I think your background is a must for listeners to understand just your story and just how much of an inspiration you are overcoming the obstacles you had to overcome. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing, feel free to lay out that foundation so we can get a good grasp on the different topics that we want to discuss today.
Okay, so I was born in the early 1950s. My mum had what was then called toxic poisoning, which I think is now called preeclampsia. And I was a twin, and luckily I was born first and was rushed to what is now called the neonatal unit. They were in their infancy in lots of ways, saving young babies, and I was given 100% oxygen, which kept my brain in a reasonable state, I would say. But it destroyed the retinas at the back of my eye. And so by the time I was 3 weeks old, I had lost probably 80%, if not 85% of my sight. My twin sadly didn't survive. So in the time that I was born, all blind children and the parents of blind children, they encouraged the parents to send us away to boarding school at 3.5. And I went to a sunshine home to be taught to be independent. My mum said, well, I've already made her independent, which she had. But I suppose I mingled with other blind children at that point, realised that I wasn't the only blind child. I then moved on to my infant junior school, which was a great school. There's a little film about us that was made, and we got up to all sorts of things. I did some country dancing, and the school was full of activities, running races. We had a gym, we had lots of music. Our music teachers were blind, so we realised that people grew up and had jobs. And then I was really fortunate and went to the only grammar school for blind girls in the UK and had an excellent education. I don't think I ever settled at being away from home, but it was the way life had to be. When I left school, I trained as a physio, and I've always wanted to do something to do with education. And so I moved into the role of rehabilitating various people. Now, interestingly, I was working in the gym at a London hospital, and I had a patient that I used to treat after coffee every morning. And one of the other physios said, do you know that your patient waves at you every day when you come in the room? And I went up to him and said, well, you know, I love it that you wave at me because they've just told me, but really you need to shout, I'm over here. And then he said, oh, I didn't know you were deaf as well as blind. So that's one small situation that I found incredibly amusing. On the other side, I've only ever had one patient. I was just about to give this patient a walk, and she had an amputation of one leg. And the doctor said to her, well, how are you getting on? She said, well, I'm getting on really well, but I don't like this blind physio. And the doctor said, why not? And she said, because she can't see where she's going. And the doctor said, no, but you can. And I thought, so what I'm trying to get across is whatever we do in life, the blindness, although we don't want it to, predominates us. Even if we're successful in what we do, we can't get away from the fact that at the end of the day, we can't see. Now, as a child, I could see colour and people's faces, and that was a useful bit of vision. And when I lost that, that was really, really hard. Being brought up as a blind person was never hard because I never know what it's like to see fully. And I loved my physio, but it all changed as time went on, and my children, I met and married Greg, and our children were learning musical instruments. And I had done 3 grades on the piano at school and carried on, but I'd never really taken up a second instrument. Some other people at school did, but I didn't. But the children were learning, and I thought, I'll carry on with the piano. So I did. I think I did my grade 5 when my eldest daughter did grade 2. And I think I did a bit more. And then I thought, the piano is a lonely instrument. I would like to have an instrument that I can worship with in church. And in the church that we just moved to in Ely at that point, we'd moved from London to Ely because one of our sons was a chorister. And the flute was playing, and I just thought, that's what I'd love to do. I'd like to play the flute and worship with it. That was the start of my flute playing. Is that enough background?
Oh my goodness, it was perfect. Thank you so much. Yes. So how old were you, if you don't mind sharing, how old were you when you picked up the flute for the first time?
Greg gave it to me for my 40th birthday because I'd murmured about wanting the flute. One of his half-sisters played the flute, but she wasn't really around to help me. And it took me 2 years to find a teacher because every time I told them I couldn't see and that I had to use Braille music, people didn't want to know. And then I found somebody and she said, Oh, well, of course I'll teach you. I was at college with a blind flautist. Now, I knew that blind flautist, and sadly she's no longer with us. But that was an amazing start to learning more about the flute. Somebody who had the ability to believe that I could do it. And that was the start of it. And I did 3 grades and a teaching diploma, and I taught probably for about 10 years. I taught my first student for nothing for a whole term to see if I could do it, to see what I could pick up. You know, what I picked up then was nothing in comparison to what I pick up now. And the other person that I met, who people may or may not know, was somebody called Tara Ben-Tovim. She was a very famous flautist in her own right. She beat James Galway at the age of 21 to principal flute of the Liverpool Phil. And she was a real educationist. And she sat with me while my student, which was an adult, was playing. And every time the student did something, she hit me on the arm, because she was quite a funny lady. Liz, what's happening? What's she doing? And she said, listen, she's doing it now. She's doing it now. What is it? And she kept on. And in the end, I said, oh, this was in the early days of my teaching. She's got her top finger down for middle D. And she said, and don't you ever forget it, because you don't need to be able to see. You need to hear that. And she was a massive inspiration to me. And 3 weeks before she died, she knew she was dying. And she rang me up and she said, Liz, you were going to come out and see me in France, but don't come, because I have only got 3 weeks left, and I'm ringing up to say you're a genius teacher. And I said, yeah, but I'm only a genius teacher because of the genius ways you inspired me. And we had a lovely little last conversation together. It was very privileged. And then I had a message from her friend saying she'd asked if I would speak about our friendship at her Thanksgiving in England, which I did.
What an amazing tribute. Thank you for sharing that, because now you are in your 70s. So you've been playing flute for 30 years. And the 3 years that I've been working with you, I'm just blown away by your perseverance, the tenacity that you have to learn these pieces of musical repertoire, and you just show up day in and day out, and you are so vigilant to conquer your goals with so much gusto and so much warmth that it inspires me. So I want to tell you that, and I know you know that, but I just wanted to say that out loud. And so because I know of your challenges and I know that you learn music through Braille, most flutists may not know what that process looks like. Can you break it down for them so they can get a peek into your world? Because I know you share every week how you have to request certain pieces to be brailled. What does that cost?
Yeah, well, that's an expense in itself.
Yeah.
Well, it depends what the piece is. If it's a flute choir piece, it tends to be more expensive because it's got more than one part. And I have a fund. Well, I did have a fund. I should have a new fund, but they're taking a long time to fund it. So at the moment, I've got no funding to pay my PA, and I've got no funding for Braille music. But it can cost. We've put in a request for the new Associated Board books 1 to 7 to be put into Braille, and that is just the flute parts, and that is going to be £3,300, which is why I need a grant. So I have to work out what value do I want? What is it I want to put in Braille? Because it has to be what I'm going to use. And I have to be honest, there are things I've had Braille that I regret because I don't use them. So if I hold up the thickness of this book, I don't know how much you can see. A minute, let me get it the right way up. Let's try the one that I really want, which is this one. Right. Okay. So this one, can you see the Braille page there?
Yes.
So if I open it out, you can get a rough idea of how thick it is, how many pages it is. Now this is just the flute part of the 3 movements of the Mozart D major. So the other problem with Braille is it's incredibly bulky.
Okay.
So the learning process is however you can learn. So I might learn by listening to a recording, or I might follow the recording at a slow speed with the Braille music. And then Braille music is not like print. It's not lines and spaces. It's a mathematical code of dots and things. So nothing goes above the note or below the note. It all goes in front or after. So it's quite cluttered. Mm-hmm. So to pick a phrase, you've got to look at everything that that phrase has in it. I'll just pick it up. And I found a bit that says, this is a trill. It gives you the note the trill is on. It gives you the fact that it's got a neuto sign on it. Then it's got a slur. Mm-hmm. And then it's got a note. And all the notes are complex because a semiquaver and a semibreve are the same dots. Mm. You have to work out by your knowledge, well, that can't possibly be a semibreve because there's 6 of them. A crotchet is the same as a demi-semiquaver. So you have to be, to a degree, mathematical to work it out. But because I wanted to teach, I've had to learn about lines and spaces. So I have never seen lines and spaces. Other than as a child, I could see the 5 lines and the dots, but I couldn't tell you which lines they were on. So I have, I suppose, got a minor amount. Mm. And the more you memorize and the longer you've memorized anything, the better it is. Your memory, you have your working memory, which is when you're learning things, which is part of your short-term memory. And then it goes into your long-term memory. Now, that can take a degree of time for anybody because it moves, I think it might be into the hippocampus, but I haven't got any details in front of me. Mm. And I think that is where the long-term memory may be. And sleeping helps. How you practice, how you work out the best way to store. And, you know, I have to pull something out. I had a student on Wednesday. She's just about to take her grade 4 and Mum said to me, well, what are the grade 5 pieces? And I said, I don't know. I haven't looked at the new list. And she looked at it and she said, oh, the Telemann F major's on here. And I picked up the flute and I played the first 3 lines. She said, how can you just do that? And I said, well, that's a piece I've been teaching for a long time. Mm. And I think for me, I don't have a choice. Mm-hmm. I can't do anything than memorize. I did write an article about reading Braille with my feet, but I can't do
it. No, I love that. Thank you so much for putting up the Braille score. It was so amazing to see it. And thank you for breaking down the method. I didn't realize how much math was involved. That's mind-blowing. So this was the other part of the conversation that you and I wanted to share today, and you touched on it, and that is memory. So because Telemann, Mozart, the French pieces, Bach sonatas are stored in your memory, this is something that you're intrigued about, and this is a topic that you've researched a lot about. And in lessons, you often say to me, you know, that you encourage your seeing students to memorize as much as they can, if possible. Now, school activities get in the way from time to time, but you encourage them because you convey to me that you have, because you need to memorize, you have this special deep insight with music at this internal level. And because of that, you can express yourself, you feel more freely because you don't have that cumbersome, or that, I'm using this term very loosely, take this with a grain of salt. You don't have that score as a sore. You don't have that score in the way between you expressing yourself to your audience. So having the piece memorized is more ingrained and more internalized, where you can be more expressive. And that's why you encourage others to tap into that memorization tool if they can, in order to really be connected with the music that they're playing?
I think this all links to the fact that having taught for probably almost 20 years, I became disillusioned with grade exams, jumping kids through hoops, but actually not but feeling that they really know what music is all about. It was all a sort of target game. And I researched and joined the British Suzuki Flute group, which revolutionized my whole approach to teaching and to memorizing. Dr. Suzuki talks about how babies in Japanese learn the Japanese language because they hear it from their mothers. And that's a really hard language. It's the hardest language to learn, but the children pick it up because they hear it every day. And he maintains that if children listen to music, then if they misuse it from whatever age, it's ingrained in them. And what I have found, which is fascinating, is that I teach Suzuki to 90%, 95% of my children. There are the odd ones that maybe don't because they've come to me from somewhere else. And those children learn from day one to listen to their own sound. They're not encumbered with music. They develop good posture, good hand position, and they develop a good sense of musicianship because they're learning by listening. And it becomes very natural. My first Suzuki student, before she left me, she said, I don't feel comfortable with music in front of my face. I think now she probably does. But I think I still don't know enough about. I think there's so much to learn about how we memorize and hold and deliver music. I think how we practice it. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would learn a piece of music from beginning to end and think, right, I think I know that piece. I'm now realizing that's only the sketch of memory, playing the piece, learning to pick the piece up on any bar within the music. I have games with my students. So maybe they're learning Lightly Row, they might be learning Twinkle, they might be learning Aunt Rhody, and I will pick a line in the middle of the piece, not at the beginning, and I'll say to them, now, where does that belong? What piece does that belong in? And they get to know because they're learning to listen, to recognize, and therefore it's building their musical ability and store. And they learn to play looking at an audience from day one.
Very true.
They don't hide behind the music stand in the early days. Now, some children get to the point where they don't want to memorize anymore because they're teenagers. They've got lots of other things they need to do in their lives. And you have to be realistic with all students. And you have to say, okay, then you've got to remember what the memory's done for you. And actually, there was one student I had who did say to me she didn't want to memorize music anymore. And she'd done her grade 8, she'd done her diploma, her performance diploma, and then the school had this opportunity for 6 students at the highest level to play a concerto or a movement of a concerto in the cathedral. And this was around the time of my accident, which was 2021. So I wasn't actually teaching her. 2022, it was 21-22. I wasn't teaching her. And she used to come round with chocolate biscuits that she'd made and have a cup of tea and a chat. And she came round about 3 weeks before she got a place to play in the concerto, and so did my other student. 2 of them did. Because I thought, what happens if one does and one doesn't? They're both in the same year. They're both amazing. They both play better than I do. And you know what? I don't mind that. I love the fact that they play better than me. That's a real goal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start till I was a grown-up, over 40. Anyway, Sophie said to me, I thought I'd better let you know I've actually memorised. Oh, what did she play? Anyway, she'd memorised her piece without even telling me, because she felt she wanted to be utterly, utterly secure.
Wow.
So, and my other student who played the first movement of the Reinecke Concerto memorised it as well. And you know, that was one of the proudest days of my life with my students, that 2 students delivered such amazing music in the cathedral. Because a lot of students you teach, and I think Dr. Suzuki says this, you don't teach them to necessarily be professionals, you teach them to develop and to have skills to play at whatever level they want. And I think that's so important. Every student I teach is different. And I use my Suzuki methods, I use my brain, I use whatever that one child needs. So you teach the child. You don't just get hung up on the music or the instrument. You look at that child and you think, what is going to make that child love the flute or love the music? Because at the end of the day, that's what makes it magic.
Oh, such beautiful words. So wonderfully said. And I won't do this to you because we have so much more to talk about, but I could end the episode right there on that sentiment. Because it's so true. You need to teach the individual. And I loved what you said. You know, you want them to, basically what I heard was you want that child, whether or not they turn into a professional musician or not, you want them to continue throughout their life having an appreciation for the arts and whatever that looks like for them in their unique world. That's amazing. So, because you said something very interesting, Liz, in a past lesson of ours, if you are comfortable sharing it, I would like to talk about it. And it's this idea of what you just said with the long-term memory. You had your accident about 4 or 5 years ago, and you said something in lessons how you're a better teacher because of the accident and that time away, and then coming back to the instrument. You noticed and observed that certain characteristics, per se, of your teaching was that much stronger because of that trial that you went through. Can you break that down and tell me why you came to that conclusion?
The accident was a brain injury. We really still don't know what quite happened, but I sustained 3 cerebral hemorrhages, and I had no memory for the first 10 days of this accident, which we now know is called post-traumatic amnesia, and it's something the body does to protect. Because actually I have no knowledge of the pain, but my family have no idea whether I would ever have a memory. So the trauma they went through was great. And it has left its legacy, because I'm still racking my brains to think what that second pupil played in the cathedral, and I still haven't come back with it. And I didn't teach for a whole year, and one of my pupils' mums was a neuroanaesthetist, and she was very good to the family when I was very poorly, and when they didn't really know, at one stage, they didn't really know whether I would live or not. My son told his fiance, I think I've held my mum's hand for the last time because she's gone into intensive care and she's not responding. Now, that wasn't told to me till 6 months afterwards, but it gave me an insight into something that I have no knowledge of and how serious it was for the whole family. And I do have a legacy of I still can't think what this girl played. It'll come to me. But what you're wanting me to focus on is before my accident, I had worked on the D major Mozart because I had never played it and it was on the level 5 Suzuki syllabus. And I had done a year, I would say, possibly almost, of studying it. I wouldn't say that I could play it particularly well, but I'd looked at how it worked. I could play it slowly, and I was looking at all the articulation. Now, after my accident, that wasn't something I went back to because my priority was to teach my students, and that was where my energies were. But now I am looking at maybe finishing my level 5 Suzuki, and so I've picked up the D major, and I haven't touched it since before my accident, but it's all there in the memory. It's all stored. And in that time that I haven't played it, my brain has been working on it because I've come back to it, and I can tell you it's a lot easier than it was 5 years ago.
Mm.
And also, if I had practiced for 5 years intensely, I don't think it would have been as good. And I can't tell you I don't know enough about the brain, but I think something magical goes on in the long-term memory. And most of us try to play from memory too quickly.
Okay.
And that's why it breaks down. And, I'm not saying that everyone has to play from memory. I don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And my students play from memory until they are in a position to choose for themselves. I believe there's great advantages in memorizing music, but it's not for every musician.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make that clear.
No, I'm glad you did. No, that's amazing. And no, there is something with letting that memory and letting the music and the rhythms and what the piece is trying to say stew in your musical being for some time. There's different stages of learning. In the initial stage, it could be what's printed on the page. And then when it's been with you for some time and woven into your musical DNA, when you go to perform it maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, you're a different person. And so when you present it at different stages of your life, it comes out in different ways. But because it's been with you and maybe you haven't been with it for every day for 2 years straight, when you do pull it out of the filing cabinet to play it, you're right. Like that memory is stored. And when you tap back into the notes on the page, the music almost comes more to life and your performance come more to life. And I know that from between my master's and my DMA, my thesis for my master's was on the Native American flute, specifically with the Hopi tribe. And I was looking at Catherine Hoover's Winter Spirits and Kokopelli, and I played it really nice for my master's recital. Now you go fast forward maybe 7, 8, 9 years later, I was finishing my last DMA recital, and I realized I was about 2 pieces short for my recital, and I needed about another 5, 10 minutes worth of music. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't think this through really well. What do I do? And I just instantly thought of Hoover's 2 pieces, Kokopelli and Winter Spirits. And I was like, well, my recital's in a few weeks. No problem. I'll go over a couple things and, hope for the best. And actually, those 2 performances of those 2 pieces were everybody's favorite from the recital.
Because the music flows. It flows out of you in a different way. I mean, I can't speak about what it's like to read music with your eyes because I don't do it. Yeah. But I do know that the eyes use a massive part of your brain when they're working. Mm. And if you don't have to use it, then your brain can do other things. Right. My brain's been whirring. The other people played the Chamarade concertina.
I knew it would come to you. I knew it. I did. I was like,
ages.
I was like, it's only going to take her like 5
me.
Yeah, I could tell. But I knew, knowing you, I was like, it's only going to take her 5, 10 minutes. She's got this. Oh, shoot. I'm glad you thought of it. But no, if it flows and you can connect more to it because now you're not fixated on all the little details in the black and white. Am I holding this note out long enough? And am I doing the right fingering, right? It's there and you've worked it up. So when you go to play it, it just flows freely and more organically because now you have this deeper connection with it and you're telling the story of the piece because of that work that you had done prior.
Do you not think there's a degree of, we don't worry about when we speak, do we? Because we do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it comes from the same thing. We've memorized. People say to me, "Oh, I can't memorize music." Well, you can, because if you've memorized your language all your life, you can memorize music.
That's a great example. Yeah, because music is a language. I love that. So, because I want to respect your time, we've covered a lot. What would you like to convey to the Flute podcast listener today in terms of, overcoming obstacles or memorizing your music, a sentiment that you've learned throughout your many decades of being a flutist or a teacher? The floor is completely yours. I just want to make sure that you feel like you've conveyed everything that you want to bring to the conversation today.
I think as a teacher, I don't want any of my students to be a clone of me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to nurture their own abilities, their own sound, their own passion. I am truly passionate about the flute. I'm passionate about teaching. I long for my next generation of students to take on the passion I offer them in their own way, in their own individuality. I think that's one of the most important things. I want to continue to learn. There's so much I don't know about the flute. There's so much I don't know about music development. I've done courses with Ian Clark, and he starts talking about all these things about the flute that he's discovered. I mean, he's a genius. And I sit there and I think, well, never even thought about that bit, There is so much for us to absorb as individuals, as players or teachers. We have never reached the end goal.
And to be patient with that and to walk alongside yourself every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I admire about you, Liz, is patience.
I think patience is newer to me than it perhaps always was. I value life in a new way since my accident. God's given me an opportunity to live, to continue to live my life. And I want to serve him. And I want him to be glorified in what I do. I don't mind if somebody says, wow, your student this, that, the other. That's fine. But at the end of the day, our creation is God-given to us. And I think when you've nearly lost life, it becomes valued in I value every day. I thank God for every day that he gives me. And what can I do for him in my music? And my husband also has had 2 recent things in the last 2 years, which he's pulled through, and we value each other in a way very differently from before. We don't take each other for granted anymore. And isn't it the same with music, with teaching? When students come into the room, I often think to myself, what do I need to teach them today? I think in every lesson, you need to focus on one thing. If you bombard kids with too much, or adults, it doesn't work. If you think of one thing today that this student needs to accomplish to take them one tiny bit nearer their goal.
Amen. I 1000% agree. Playing music, learning music, being alive is such a privilege. And there is that piece of gratitude and just bathing in that, bathing in his blessings, bathing in who he is, bathing in the talents and the skills and the knowledge and the capability of learning through his creation, through us. It's such an honor. It's such a blessing to glorify him in all that we do, whether it's writing, teaching, playing, getting to share your testimony. It is such an honor. And you're right, each and every day really is a gift.
And you know, what you wear, what you dress in. I went into school last week and my student said, "Oh, your earrings match your jumper, miss. You look great."
Oh,
so sweet.
Oh, I love
So
that.
sweet.
Well, whenever you come on screen
I loved it. Made my day.
Yeah, whenever you come on screen for our weekly video calls, I love seeing the different sweater colors you have and your music jewelry, whether it's that beautiful necklace you have or your earrings, or even, before we hit record, I was like, Liz, your hair looks gorgeous. You got a haircut. You got your hair done. I'm so jealous. I need a haircut. But yeah,
That was coincidence.
Yeah.
I didn't get it done deliberately. It's been booked for weeks. It just worked well for me.
Nice. See, it was meant to be. But just the way you present and package yourself up together, in your attire, and just the cleanliness and how you present yourself to the world, that matters too, for sure.
It matters doubly when you can't see yourself, because I have to say to people, I hope there's no marks. I do ask Greg on days when we have time, but some days he's gone by the time I get dressed to go and have his kidney dialysis stuff. So I'm on my own and I think, I haven't asked him, what am I going to wear that looks good?
Oh, no. No, you always look so beautiful. But no, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing your testimony, and thank you for sharing your expertise and just, the different observations and things you've picked up throughout your career. I really appreciate you showcasing them in such a mighty way today.
It's been a joy.
Thank you, Liz.
And that's a joy.
Oh, good. I'm so
glad.
Thank
you for asking me. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. It was just like, oh my goodness, Liz is such a good friend, and you and we share a lot in common. And our lessons to me probably mean more to me than they do to you, because I've grown as a woman because of who you are, how you shaped me and molded me through, you loving on me and sharing your life's testimony with me. And you came in my life at the right time, because I know God was showcasing perseverance through you to me at a time when I really needed it because of my accident. And he showed me week after week, look, in a very loving way, not in a, comparison way, but look at what Liz has conquered. Look at what Liz has overcome. If she can do it, that gives you hope for tomorrow too. And so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. It's very much a two-way process, because I think you mentioned once about praying for students, and I thought, gosh, I've never thought of praying for my students. That's a genius idea. And I don't always pray for every student every day, but sometimes I'm thinking about my next day and I think, I need to pray for that student. She really needs prayer. Mm. So I think our friendship is very much two-way and very much well balanced.
I wish I could give you a massive hug and a big kiss on your cheek.
One day.
We are going to do it. It is in the books. Oh, shoot. Thank you so much, Liz. You are such a blessing, and I will see you tomorrow in our lesson. I can't wait to see you twice in 1 week.
Me too. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye-bye.
As today's episode closes, I want to leave you with this thought. You are not just a musician. You're a whole person with a story, a calling, and a voice that matters. That's why I created the Flute 360 Accelerator, to walk alongside flutists who are rebuilding confidence, reshaping their teaching, or rediscovering joy in their art. One member said, Heidi helped me reset my priorities and truly believe in my own success. If you're ready to find that same clarity, come join us. You'll find all the details at heidikbegay.com/shop or in the show notes below. I can't wait to see the musician and the human you're becoming.
Let's talk about flute.